And welcome back to Mix Presents Sound Film and Television 2021. We're on the technology panel now, technology and workflow specifically. What's changed and what's next? I'm Tom Kenny, the editor of Mix, and I'm joined by Thomas Dolby of the Peabody Conservatory, head of the new media music for new media program at Johns Hopkins. We have Bob Ehlers with Audinate. Bob has gone around the country and set up quite a few systems, I'd imagine, right? Dave Rieley from Focusrite Pro, who is sort of instrumental in bringing some new audio networking technology to our world. And we have Phil Wagner from SSL, who over many years of friendships and dinners, Phil is just the consumer of technology. He knows about it in the pro space. He knows it about the consumer space. He's an avid fan and a professional. I'd like to thank Audinate and Peabody Conservatory for sponsoring this panel, along with Focusrite Pro. It's been about 18 months for everybody. Thomas, let's start with you. I mean, you're an educator. How do you put what we've been through in the last 18 months in perspective for students who are just starting out?
Yeah, thanks, Tom. I think the last 18 months have been very different to like middle-aged white guys from 18-year-old students. 18 months when you're 18 is a huge chunk of your life. They say that life is like the frets on a guitar. Each one is 1/24th of the distance from the bridge to the nut. And so 18 months, if it feels long to us, imagine how long it feels to a freshman in college. I never went to college myself. I left school at 16. There was really nowhere for me to learn the stuff that I wanted to learn. But for my students, it's a very different, kettle of fish. And it's interesting that they've come in, to focusing on this business and this, the skill set that will be required to get good at sound for picture at a time when it's suddenly radically changed because of COVID and new technologies and so on. So many of my students, until a few weeks ago, I'd never met in person. I'd only ever met them over Zoom. And ironically, one of the first things I used to tell students was, there's really no substitute for a bunch of people sitting around a screen and a pair of speakers and saying, well, that's too bright or too dull, that's too blue or too red. And that you need to establish that personal connection. And then you can go home and start doing stuff remotely. Well, these guys are sort of grown up, doing stuff remotely. So it's obviously a very different situation for them. But now they're coming back together and actually meeting and being in a room for the first time, listening to those speakers. And it's really a revelation for them. But it's very interesting to see the way they've taken on board the restrictions and requirements of the new technology. And, I think these students are going to be really the first generation that sort of leave college fully qualified and experienced with these new tools and these new requirements, and will get out into the workforce. And before we know it, they'll be nipping at our heels to get into the charts.
Bob, if you could chime in, because a lot of your job at Audinate is going out in the world and working with networking technologies. So there's been a lot of shutdown events. Could you take off of that?
I think that the most profound change I've seen is the need for real-time collaboration with immersive feel, right? People want to be as comfortable over the network with their data, their video, their audio, their metadata, their control, as they are in the venue, right? So what we're seeing is an extension out because of social distancing and requirements for people to work at home, and that's now become the new norm. And people want to upscale the quality of the experience. They want to feel like they're engaged with somebody. If they've got a low quality, artifacted out image coming to them, they've got lots of latency and time delay. It becomes really difficult to do anything. And in music, collaboration becomes hugely complex and difficult when you're dealing with things like technologies that are designed for voice communication, right? Right now we're experiencing 2 seconds of delay, but we're all being compensated, and that's fine. If I'm playing an instrument, how do I follow a drum lead that's 2 seconds delayed to me? And those are the problems that we've had to solve now.
Dave Rieley, certainly witnessed you have a lot of customers who are both home-based and facility-based and such, and there's been this sort of explosion into how do I upgrade at home? What do I do? I mean, what's your take on that sort of home and facility interaction this past year?
I mean, it's very interesting because I wanted to piggyback off something that Thomas said. How a freshman in college, 18 months is a completely different scale of time than it would be for, as he mentioned, all of the old people on the call. But I think it also is different for the need of collaboration. They're growing up in an area where that collaboration can be different. So they're learning a different way than how any of us learned. So I think what seems to be happening is we're adapting as they're teaching us how to adapt. Now, the adjustment to go from home or from work to home was obviously everyone thought, okay, we're on a 2-week lockdown. Clearly not the case. We saw people who are working in big facilities going down to, I'm going to get a temporary interface for home and it'll be fine. And then as it kept going on and on and on, it started to show that, oh, this is not the way. I'm here. And you see so many people in their environment who don't want to go back to the office. So the need for better quality devices has absolutely spiked, regardless of what venue you're doing, whether it be post, whether it be music, whether it be immersive audio. I mean, it depends on what you're doing, but most people have that demand.
It's interesting to me that there will be some form of this home interaction from now on. It certainly seems to me. And when we did this panel last year, I sort of got on. It's still, a year ago, still going. They said, "What's the technology to think about when you go home?" Everybody said Wi-Fi. Right away, make sure your Wi-Fi stable. Wasn't the answer I was expecting, but these home technologies matter. We've been incorporating them from other sort of industries. Phil, you're a gadget freak at home, and everything else you test, you pull it out of the box. I mean, what's that home and office and professional work environment like?
I think there's a lot of interesting trends that are going on. Work that I've been involved with for the last 10 years seems to be coming to roost, so to speak, where we see, high-res audio coming into its own now and immersive audio coming into its own with the recent announcement from Apple. So I think there's a lot of excitement for consumers of audio and that they can appreciate it in ways today that they were unable to even a couple years ago.
I think that the new chapter in all of this is going to involve low latency, high quality, networked collaboration. And as is the case with a great recording studio, the technology needs to be invisible, transparent. You need that to go away so the musicians, the producers, the performers can talk to each other without any intervention by technology. And I think that, one of the silver linings of this dark cloud of the COVID era maybe will be that we take a big hike in the quality and the usability of that kind of networked audio collaboration.
Gave you a natural segue there. My goodness.
Yeah, thanks for the. It's really interesting because back in 2019, just before all of the shutdown happened, we were collaborating with Focusrite on something we called Dante at Distance. Right, we started with the University of West London, connected to Edinburgh. And, collaborative play, right, over a leased fiber circuit. That's not economical for mortals. But then we moved into things like Guildhall, got a little less expensive, and we had a lot of participation from SSL, Yamaha, people like that have all brought equipment in. And we just recently did a thing called the Blue Note project with Peltrex, where we interconnected 3 venues, New York, down in Nashville and Washington, D.C., and had improvised jazz being played in real time, linking those 3 locations with video, right? So all of a sudden that happens. Well, those you're right, Thomas, about it being still out of reach, and we need to make it accessible. Things like what we're doing now, we've got Dante running with collaboration in the cloud, supporting a number of different network providers that allow collaboration in real time over standard internet connectivity. Internet connectivity is now, I think the average worldwide is 110 megabits per second right now into the home. And with 5G and DOCSIS 3.1, you've got 10 gig capable. So all of a sudden the bandwidth is not the barrier. It's actually the latency and the priority across the network and getting common clock. And that's, problems that Focusrite with, their interfaces and Audinate are trying to solve. And SSL, I can have a remote console mixing everybody against the cloud. And that's all possible right now using low-cost residential connectivity.
I want to separate. There seems like there's three realities. There's the original reality where you have to go into a recording studio, a large recording studio, to make a great big record. And a lot of that is still happening. Clearly, there are leagues of individuals who are able to make great recordings at home using equipment that is priced at a level that had never been available to anyone before. And the quantity of plugins and desktop workstation raw power and interfaces that people can buy provides a great level of quality for the masses. And then we have what Bob just alluded to, things that we've been working on out of almost being forced to over the last 18 months, creating the next generation reality that goes to high bandwidth, high channel count over the internet using high quality devices to get point to point, and even the future of cloud where broadcast is going. So there's a lot of next generation technologies which are coming forward and available to those who care to pay attention to it.
Take off a minute, because this sense of maintaining quality resolution across multiple points is a challenge, correct?
Well, again, it gets back to time and time synchronization. That actually is the basis of it. The bandwidth for PCM over a network is insignificant relative to the available bandwidth. But the synchronization of everything is really the key, and the compensation for distances, the compensation for processing, the compensation for maybe compression if somebody's doing that, all go into the experience. It's like I can get it there at high quality. I can get it there, in multi-channel. You can send 64 channels of audio across a internet connection very easily now. But trying to get that all synchronized and play out at the same time, where it's not driving people crazy because one guy is 150, 200 milliseconds behind everybody else. That's what we're trying to solve, and I think we're very close to having something that's accessible for everybody on a student's price. Because that's where it's got to be.
Distance.
Thomas, I'm really interested in students' collaboration in a sense, because there's many of them are instrumentalists. They're used to playing alone, and now they're suddenly stuck at home. But have you experimented with remote collaboration among students, and does that suddenly put them in a technical and a creative mindset? How does that work?
Yeah, well, synchronous collaboration has just not been possible over the last 18 months. Very early on in the pandemic, our best IT minds at Johns Hopkins tried to find ways for it to be possible, especially for like choral teaching or brass wind, the ones for whom it was hardest to ever get in the same room at the same time. And the conclusion was no. The teachers at the level, at a Peabody Conservatory level, the nuances of performance and practice are such that, the teachers were just saying, I can't do it. I can't do it. It's online. I'm going to have to wait till it's all over. So they're happy to be back.
Challenge accepted. I think, Thomas, we should have an offline discussion about that.
Well, obviously, we've been looking into sort of more dedicated proprietary systems, probably including, Dante and others. We're wired for Dante in the between the 6-7 studios that we have. People are used to using it. I think what has been more feasible to adapt to in this period has been the kind of creative, collaborative process that exists when, Hans Zimmer is in Santa Monica and Christopher Nolan, the director, is in Tribeca, New York, and can they have a meaningful spotting session, over the course of 3 hours or 6 hours, as meaningful as it would be if Chris is there in Hans's studio, on a couch at the back of the control room. And I think they are finding that, yes, that is the case, and that the technology that makes that possible for them is accessible to people that don't have, Hollywood AAA budgets. So that's a very positive thing, that aspect of the production process is actually feasible today. And while we're all gagging for, low latency, real-time collaboration between musicians, people are skeptical, I think. Maybe you can prove them wrong, you guys. I think if you watch CNN and the correspondent in New York is talking to a correspondent in Los Angeles, and at the end of every question, there's a yes. Well, I think that, it's like, are we really to believe that if CNN can't pull that off, that this is going to be possible, between musicians? People are skeptical about it. So I guess they're trying to work with what they have.
I would like to continue with about the sort of connectivity and collaboration, because there's a point with the localization that Dave was talking about earlier, and the distance that Bob is talking about, and the creative aspect that Thomas is talking about. This is a triangle that needs to come together, correct? And how do we get there? How do we get there to this point? Dave, do you want to start?
What really feels like needs to happen is to have a more consistent connection, right? And this is something that we've all been talking about. This is something that we all want it to be. The stability is what is important. Otherwise, when these things drop, as we've all learned from being on Zoom calls all year and all of it, you have problems with connectivity, you really can't connect. And when you're doing something as emotionally loaded as music, you're trying to speak to people. If you're using movies, you need to be able to connect. So I think without having that backbone, it's just going to be a long slog, or we're going to learn a new way to connect. And I think that is something we're learning from, again, the students, people who are growing up in an environment that they don't have the physical touch connection that we all grew up with. They're now learning how to develop that connection. So I think that as time goes on, and hopefully we get into a better place as communities in terms of health, so we can be closer, I think we're going to keep learning how to be able to handle it, being more remote.
Jump in. Have you accepted that this?
Well, I was just going to say, Dave's spot on, and our collaboration with, our ecosystem has yielded a bunch of devices. Now there are devices that are 5G enabled right now that are interfaces for Dante. There are wide area network interface devices that are designed for Dante, and we now have cloud services that we're working on trying to roll out that are going to enable network providers to do that. I think one thing that is 5G is going to be a watershed for this, and it's mostly around the latency and the ability for carriers to manage that network and QoS. They have an idea referred to as slicing, which is sort of like the MVNO, right? The mobile virtual network operator. It's where I can have an overlay network that's essentially private, but it runs in a virtualized world, and it's QoS managed. And we've been working with a couple of carriers to test these things out, and they actually work quite well. Problem is, you don't have ubiquitous coverage, and where it is covered, it's still a wireless technology. So somebody turns on the microwave, and there goes my connection. So then you get to things like redundancy and failover. Do I have my cable modem or my fiber connection as primary and then fail over to something else, which means that you're going to need a more advanced router at home. But those more advanced routers are still a $200 solution.
Part of this is looking ahead as well. I think one of the interesting parts about the 18 months is a number of sort of outside solutions have worked their way in and being developed now, right? I mean, nobody expected Zoom appeared overnight, seemingly. For the first 2 months, I still thought it was a camera operator. But the point being, crises provides opportunity often. And so, Thomas, let's start with you as sort of a wrap up, because unfortunately we are approaching our 30-minute time. What are the opportunities and what are the innovations ahead? And what do you tell an 18-year-old who's coming among a group of people for the first time? What do you tell them is ahead?
I tell them, look, I'd like to put you guys in touch with the technologists, with the companies that are setting the standards. I'd like you to go and work for them, intern for them. Teach them something new that they don't know, because they tend to think they know everything, but you guys have got new ways around things, and you need to get in amongst them and be a part of the change. And they've got great ideas, they've got boundless energy, and they're going to show us new ways to do things. So that's really my solution here is to sort of mix up the generations a little bit and show them the way. So, for you technology companies, I would encourage you to get in touch with me, and let's mix it up a little bit with the students. And here's my email address. It looks it's about to front of my screen, but I'm looking at your poster there, Dave, and it's the right way around. So hopefully people can read that. Dolby1@jh.edu. Come and get some interns from my students. Come and sponsor us. Do some experiments. They're eager to try out your new systems. Let's make a network.
Bob, if you were to address this class, a generation that might have tremendous creative potential is used to, their first reference was an MP3 for audio, and maybe their only, or their discovery of music comes on YouTube with the quality. So there's this sort of sense of quality does matter. And what would you say to his class about maintaining quality as we move forward?
Well, I think that, compromise is actually kind of a dangerous thing, because people start getting used to, high levels of compression, filtering, and doing things like that. And they untrain their ears from what is actually possible. I think that actually with immersive technologies, beamforming audio, multi-channel audio, high, 192K audio, right? The sampling and the nuance matters, and so don't let that get thrown away. The other part is look around in other industries and steal shamelessly. I mean, there's what's going on with VR and AR and gaming. All are contributing technologies to where we're going as an industry. And we got to stop being kind of parochial and say, this is the way we do it. It's like, man, there's a lot of better ways to do things out there.
Dave, I see you laughing over there, nodding your head in agreement. Please.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the idea of intermixing generations, because obviously that is what we should be doing, because we will learn as much as they will learn. And then you always can get this great collaboration. The part about MP3s and what it used to be, and don't fall prey to the idea of, oh, this is what it is, when it isn't. That is the truncated version of music. I had recently signed up for Apple Music Family to extend to my girlfriend and her children, because I wanted them to hear what immersive audio was, because they knew I talk about it all the time. And so when they put in their AirPod Pros and they started listening to, it was a Taylor Swift new Taylor version, everyone's mouths just dropped. And they were like, what am I listening to? And it's like, well, it's the same song you've heard a million times. So I think it's the fact that we are evolving, they will evolve with us, right? It always go back to the youngest generation. It's what's being fed, and it's how can we make sure that we keep them open to that there could always be better.
Phil, what excites you today? What do you look forward to in the coming years? That-
I think the future is very bright. The specs are changing. They're only specifications. The new generation are listening to better quality than we had available to us, 10, 15 years ago. I'm paying very close attention to immersive, which is happening at the production level and the listening level. And there's a tremendous movement to create more in immersive. Certainly been paying attention to high resolution, certainly been paying attention to Dante technology. And when I talk to students, I tell them the idea of just thinking about stereo, 44.1 recording is not passé, but it's not the only thing in the world. As I've been saying for many years, for those of you who know me, the world is about video and the audio that follows the video for games, for films, for television. Tom, you've been majoring on that. And it's all in surround sound, and it's all high quality. And for production professionals, we just need to be the best that is possible, and that includes being aware of immersive, being aware of high resolution, being aware of networking technologies, and implementing it wherever it makes sense.
And Bob, in wrapping up, if you would, Audinate has made tremendous inroads into live music and performance and event space and installation. It made its way into post-production certainly with immersive audio and multi-room facilities, single-room facilities. And now we're seeing it approaching music studios. This world of audio is more than music alone. What's the direction you're taking?
Well, obviously we're doing video, right? I think immersive is not one medium, right? It's not audio. It's not video. It's pressure, right? It's sound pressure. I mean, we were doing things in some of these remote environments where we had to add more bass in order for people to feel like the drum was in the room, right? And doing things that make it actually immersive. I feel, I hear, I see everything as if I'm there. And Dante AV, our video solution, is the companion technology to what we're doing with audio, because we recognize that it's the experience and carrying metadata, right? That's the other thing that we don't, we talk about high dynamic range HDR, we talk about Atmos and DTS and all these other technologies, and they're basically metadata, information about the data that can be manipulated to tune to an environment that is remote. And so it's just, again, about time and synchronization of everything. The experience needs to be synchronized.
Dave Rieley, and then we're going to let Thomas wrap it up here in a minute. Dave, timing, synchronization, even Taylor Swift needs it, correct?
Yeah, everybody does. I mean, it really is going to be the future of figuring that out wins, for sure, because without it, the actual experience will not be good. I mean, we all see these videos that are buffering and you can't tell when you know that someone is live, but then when you watch it, it all seems fake because it's not synchronized. So absolutely, when someone gets that 100% right, I think that's going to change everything.
Thomas, you've spent
just to tag on to that, Dave. I think that standards are more important than ever, because the more sophisticated and immersive the experience gets, the more you give up if it's not implemented properly. So Atmos, for example, is fabulous in Dolby's San Francisco cinema environment. It's jaw dropping. But if I go down to my local Cineplex, on a Tuesday afternoon, screen 14, if the Atmos has not been properly implemented in that space, then I'm not going to have the same experience that you did.
Well,
Agreed.
Let's wrap it up with some innovation opportunities. The message you would give. What biggest opportunity and innovation? Phil, start if you would.
The biggest opportunity for new technology, I think, is to embrace it, is to not look back, look forward.
Bob, what's the biggest innovation opportunity out there?
I think it's going to be stealing technologies from other industries and being able to apply those technologies, AI, analytics, sensors, and making things more accessible. making it simple so that people can use it. Simple is really important in this.
Dave Rieley, what's your big excitement?
I think if we can make it where people can feel connection through the technology, that's it. That's everything, right? All the emotion has to come through no matter what we're doing, because even if we're synced, if you don't feel anything, what's the point?
Thomas, we'll give you the closing word then. What excites you, and what just for a man who started out long ago on samplers and such, and early digital, what excites you today?
I'd sort of love to go back to 1981 and just be working on my Fairlight 8-voice 90,000 pound Series 2, and hopefully trying to get into real world studios to get on their new SSL. I'm sort of a nostalgist from that point of view. But actually, realistically, I think that we shouldn't underplay the fact that young people see the value of high quality audio. They love those new experiences. They love to be immersed, and they like the rarity of it, and they appreciate the rarity of it. And in a way, they've been so spoiled by this era that if they get something that feels really precious and really special and unique to them, they love it. They lap it up, but they want to share that experience with their friends. Hence the popularity of music festivals and things. We need to get that kind of tribalism, to consumers at a sort of living room level. And I think we're on a good track to do that.
Well, that's an excellent place to end, gentlemen. I want to thank you for joining us at Mix Presents Sound for Film and Television. And thank you to our audience, Thomas, Dave, Bob, Phil. Have a good day, and thank you very much.